Hello, and welcome to the APH and DeafBlind Census Updates webinar. I am Crystal Patrick, IDEA Consultant for Visual Impairment. Joining us today, we will have Terry Terrell, the NC APH ex officio, and Dr. Alan Chase will bring updates about the DeafBlind Census. We have a strong commitment to accessibility. This presentation has been designed to be accessible for all viewers. The American Printing House for the Blind Legally Blind Census Data Collection information presented by Terry Terrell.
APH criteria for consideration. Students must meet one of the following to be considered eligible for APH quota funds. Meet the definition of blindness, which is a central visual acuity of 20/200 or less, and the better eye with the best correction or peripheral field of vision no greater than 20 degrees. Or function at the definition of blindness, which is when visual function meets the definition of blindness as determined by an eye care specialist, ophthalmologist, optometrist, medical doctor, or neurologist. If neither are met, school-age students may be eligible if they qualify under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, definition of visual impairment, including blindness, according to state policy. The number of students on the census significantly increased while the funding allotment from APH remained the same. Accessible educational materials may be requested through NCAPH ordering process and ordered based on available funding, the student's written education plan, and unique needs. NCAPH makes every effort to ensure all eligible students are afforded materials and devices. However, funds are not limitless and are intended to supplement. Teams are encouraged to work together with the LEA or PSU for other funding options. Some of these options include the use of IDEA funds, the Division of Services for the Blind, or the NC Assistive Technology Program.
There were some updates made to the Legally Blind Census data collection document in ECATS. The documents are found on the Documents tab. These updates are reflective of changes made in December of 23. Currently, when information is looking at the legally blind status, teams may select meets the definition, functions at the definition, or qualifies under IDEA. Again, school-age students should be registered as meets or functions first. With IDEA, they must meet the state's criteria for visual impairment. In North Carolina, this is verified through the eligibility worksheets and assessment summary data. Please pay attention to the rules of completion for this area. The definitions set forth by APH criteria are reflected in the screenshot. Students who meet the definition, the team would select meets the definition. The definition clearly states a central visual acuity of 20/200 or less, or a peripheral field of vision no greater than 20 degrees. For students who have now been selected at functions at the definition of blindness, the team must select FDB, functions at the definition, and this is determined by an ophthalmologist or optometrist or other medical doctor, such as the neurologist. For students under the new category of IDEA, Teams are also to select functions at the definition and enter the documentation accordingly. The APH Census documentation. Documentation is collected through either an ophthalmological optometric report, the North Carolina summary, or a medical addendum. The medical addendum is specific to visual impairments and is for APH eligibility only. Summary should only reflect what is written on documents. No educational assessment such as functional visions, learning medias, or a medical diagnosis determines APH eligibility. All information should be reflected of what is in the assessment summary or on the most current eligibility worksheets in ECATS. The reading medias for students should also be reflective of the information listed on the considerations of special factors in the IEP. Parent permission is number 5 in the screenshot. Parent permission should be on file in the current PSU. If a student should move PSUs within North Carolina, new parent permission needs to be obtained. If APH devices are purchased for a student that transfers, the devices should transfer between the PSUs as long as the student remains in North Carolina. Please remind parents that the materials and devices do not become the personal property of the student. Finalized documents. Please verify that the correct information has been entered and reviewed for the student. Checking the radio button ensures that it has been reviewed and it will be submitted. If current and relevant information is not available and the student needs to be removed, please select the radio button for Remove the Student from the Current Census. Completing this form does not guarantee the student will be on the census. This is only the first of a 3-part phase in the process. Only finalized documents in a given time frame will be reviewed for accuracy to be submitted in the final phase. Again, APH documents in ECATS, only documents that are updated annually during the period of October 14th, 2024 through February 14th, 2025 will be reviewed for the 25 census. Only finalized APH Legally Blind Census documents will be pulled in the final upload. No uploaded documents are able to be pulled. All students that were marked in the 24 census that required a deletion or needed a technical correction must have them corrected and finalized. Simply completing the form is only one part of the phase. Once forms are completed and finalized, the student is then eligible for the next year's census. Therefore, finalizing the document does not ensure you can order for the student during the spring of 2024. Now we will hear DeafBlind Census update information from Dr. Alan Chase.
Thank you, Crystal and Terry. To begin with, I want to offer an overview of the DeafBlind Census. As a friendly reminder, the DeafBlind Census is an annual submission. The data collection window for 2025 will be January 1st to February the 14th. Students may be added to the census throughout the year in order to receive supports and services from the North Carolina DeafBlind Project. However, students must be added to the census during the data collection window each year in order to be counted on the census. To get started, you will access the student by logging into ECATS and accessing the Documents tab for the student that you wish to submit for the census. As shown here on the screenshot, you will select the radio button for the DeafBlind Census. As a friendly reminder, once you have begun completing the DeafBlind Census, you have the option to create a draft document. However, only finalized documents can be submitted to officially add a student to the census. The information at the beginning of the census will be pre-populated. This includes much of the demographic information that is already housed within ECATS and PowerSchool. The next section of the census is where we will collect information regarding a student's vision. It is important to note that we are collecting visual information because this is required by the National Center on Deaf Blindness as part of the data collection process. Please also note that in previous years, if you selected from the drop-down menu that further testing is required, this option is only available for 1 year. And as a result, you should plan to report on the results of those assessments by indicating what the visual functioning is of the student. This section reports on the hearing information for the student. Again, this information is reported as required by the National Center on Deaf Blindness. In the past, if you indicate that further testing was required, you should take this opportunity to report on the results of those evaluations by indicating the functional hearing of the student. In this section, you will report any other additional disabilities that a student may have. Keep in mind that a student may have other disabilities that are not reported as either their primary or secondary disability. You should review the student's file and use any current and relevant information in order to determine if additional disabilities exist. This section discusses the educational supports that a student may receive. Be sure to look throughout the student's IEP, including the related services section and the supplementary aids and services section, to identify any services that the student receives, such as the use of assistive technology or access to an intervener. On this slide, you will see a screenshot indicating that we must report under which section of IDEA or 504 a student currently receives services. As a friendly reminder, students who are in ECATS do not receive services currently under Part C. Therefore, you should select Part B if the student has an IEP. If the student has a 504 plan, please select that option. There may be some cases in which a student has neither a 504 plan or an IEP. And in such a case, you would select that they are under neither Part C or Part B of IDEA. This is likely to occur if a student is exiting from the DeafBlind Census, and we will discuss that later in the presentation. For questions 22 through 24, you will need to review the student's educational record. This section, these questions indicate the services that a student received under Part C of IDEA. If a student did not receive services under Part C of IDEA, or that information is not available, you should indicate NA for not applicable. For question 26, here you will report the educational environment in which the student is educated. Please keep in mind that this is specific to students between the ages of 3 and 5. If the student that you are reporting is age 6 or older, you will indicate NA, not applicable, for this question. For question 27, this reports the educational environment in which a student is educated for students between the ages of 6 and 22. If the student that you are reporting is between the ages of 3 and 5, then you will indicate NA for not applicable on this question. The final section of the census discusses any situations in which a student may exit from the DeafBlind Census. If a student is exiting from the DeafBlind Census, you will select from the menu provided to indicate the reason why. Please be mindful that if a student is exiting at the beginning of the census under internal reporting, you should also indicate that the student is no longer eligible for the DeafBlind Census. And at the very end of the form, you should check the radio button to indicate that the student should be removed from the census. And just a few reminders as we wrap up this section of the presentation. As always, once you complete the DeafBlind Census and ECATS, keep in mind that the information that you input is saved. And all you simply have to do is resubmit the census during the data collection window and update any relevant information that may have changed since your last submission. Please make sure that you verify that all the information is accurate and check the radio button to indicate that you have done so. And finally, for 2025, the data collection window will be January the 1st to February the 14th.
And we will hold live Q&A sessions as a follow-up to this webinar. They will be held on Tuesday, November 19th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. and again on Thursday, November 21st from 3 to 4 p.m. Please join us for a live session